Okay, so in this video, we'll be doing MCQ questions of chemistry of electrolysis. So the first question is electrolysis is the passage of dash. So it is a passage of electricity accompanied by a chemical change. So, and then the second question, a weak electrolyte is one which dissociates completely, is feebly ionized in the solution. C ionizes completely, is having high electrical conductivity. So the correct answer would be B. Because weak electrolyte is feebly ionized in the solution, whereas a strong electrolyte is completely ionized, almost completely ionized in the solution. Then the third question is, a strong electrolyte is one which, all right. So in the second question, they were talking about weak electrolyte, but in this question, they'll be talking about strong electrolyte. Now, as I said before, strong electrolyte is it is something that is completely ionized in the solution. So the correct answer would be A. Then, moving on. The fourth question, sodium chloride is A, strong electrolyte, B, non-electrolyte, C, weak electrolyte, D, none of these. So the correct answer would be A, strong electrolyte. NaCl is a strong electrolyte. Moving on to fifth question. Water is a strong electrolyte. B, it should be B, weak electrolyte, C, non-electrolyte, or D, none of these. Water is a weak electrolyte. So the correct answer would be B. Then the sixth question. Pure water consists almost entirely of A, ions, B, atoms, C, ions and molecules, D, molecules. So pure water, I'll like this more neatly. So pure water consists almost entirely of molecules. Whereas if you have impure water, or to be more specific, if you have salty or saline water, or you have water, acidulated water. So what is acidulated water? Acidulated water is when you pour H2SO4, small quantities of H2SO4 in water to make it more acidulated so that it can conduct electricity better. So if you have salty or saline water or acidulated water, this would consist of ions. So if any substance consists of ions, then it would be a good conductor of electricity. But if you have molecules, then they would be bad conductor of electricity. Because ions are basically free. So when you have free ions, then they could conduct electricity. Because salty or saline water have salt or basically ions in it. But if you take pure water, it consists almost entirely of molecules. So conducting electricity in pure water itself is a very conducting electricity in pure water won't happen because it consists entirely of molecules. Okay. Now, so the correct answer would be pure water consists almost entirely of molecules. D. Okay, so moving on. All right. The seventh question, in the electrolysis of acidulated water. So as I've said before, acidulated water is water which you have acidified a bit by pouring small quantities of H2SO4, preferably H2SO4. You could pour any other acid, but mainly if you take HNO3. So mostly you won't see people pouring HNO3 in water itself because HNO3 is a volatile acid. But you would see H2SO4 being most preferably poured into water to make it acidulated. Okay. So in the electrolysis of acidulated water, oxygen is produced by the discharge of dash ions at the cathode. So the correct answer would be OH ions. So moving on to the eighth question, the gas given off at cathode during the electrolysis of acidulated water is. So acidulated water, as I said before, is H2SO4, like water with traces of H2SO4 in it. water with traces of H2SO4. So if water is present with traces of H2SO4, it is acidulated water. So the main ions in acidulated water are H plus ions, OH minus ions, and SO4, 2 minus ions. So the question over here is the gas given. All right, so these ions would be liberated at the anode, whereas the H plus ion will be liberated at the cathode. So H plus ions, like hydrogen gas itself, H2 gas in short, will be liberated at cathode. I'll just clear these drawings to make it more neat. So the correct answer would be hydrogen, H2 or hydrogen. Ninth question. The platinum electrodes with platinum electrodes, hydrogen. So platinum electrodes are inert electrodes. They are inert electrodes. Whereas if you like copper electrodes are active electrodes. And platinum electrodes are inert electrodes. So if you see electrolysis of copper sulfate, then in that experiment, you would see if these are anode, if this is anode and this is cathode. So these cathodes, so the anode and cathode electrodes would be made of copper, which is active. With platinum electrodes, hydrogen is liberated at cathode and oxygen is liberated at anode during the electrolysis of acidified water. Anions, or the negative ions, will go towards anode, and cathodes, cations, will move towards, cations are positive ions and will move towards the cathode. So H plus is a cation, whereas OH minus is an ion. So OH minus will be liberated at anode in the form of oxygen, and H plus ion will be liberated, which is a cation, will be liberated at cathode in the form of hydrogen or H2. So with platinum electrodes, hydrogen is liberated at the cathode and oxygen at the anode. The electrode where the current enters the electrolyte is called the anode. So anode is connected to the positive terminal of the battery, the cell, whereas cathode is connected to the negative terminal of the cell. So this would be an electrolyte. These would be the electrodes, and this would be the cell. So the electrode where the current enters the electrolyte is called the anode. And current in the entire setup would move from like this. 11th question and the last question. During electrolysis, anions undergo oxidation at the anode. So this is the end of the chemistry MCQ.